We all get these emails. Hey, I'm John from ABCD. You have time for 5 minutes to get on a phone call this week? No, I don't have time, because I have no idea what you're offering me. There's no value. There's no personalization. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Search. This week, we will talk about lead generation using cold emails and funnels. Now, Joe, the reason I want to talk about this is because we do this actively for Optimum 7, and I get a lot of questions from friends as well as some business associates talking about lead generation because it's tough, right? When you are a B2B business and you're trying to do lead generation, there are a couple of different options you have. Number one, organically, you need to be visible so that you get some inbound. Number two, you could be doing on AdWords. It's extremely expensive. Yeah. Just to give you insight, I think we spend $20,000 a month on AdWords and we get $200 leads. And it's extremely hard to get conversions just because of the competition. You're paying, in our industry, you're paying $10, $15 cost per clicks. The third thing that you could do is you could actually leverage influencers based on the types of products that you have. You could also do paid social on Facebook and Instagram. Again, a lot of bad leads, crappy leads, right? And then the last thing you could do is some kind of industry magazine or some kind of placement with PR that might give you some visibility on some leads. Actually, there's one more last thing you could do, which is trade shows, right? Those are hit or miss. You either do great or you do really, really bad. But a lot of people don't do cold outreach. And this is the reason we want to talk about this. And Joe, you've seen some of these hyper-personalized outreach strategies that we do because you were the sales engineer on some of these calls, and you see that it's a cold lead. It has to be warmed up. What do you see when you speak to these individuals, which is we're basically sending them a cold email? I'll talk more about the process in a little bit, but I want your feedback on what you think the conversation is like when we go to somebody and say, you know, we can do ABCD for you. And they say, sure, show me how you do it. They're cold. They need to be convinced. How is it different than a warm inbound lead when we're talking to a cold prospect?
Well, they still need to be won over, and not just from a conversion standpoint, but just from the next step standpoint, right? Because we know that there's going to be a series of calls throughout that process, right? From the moment that lead comes in to the moment that they agree to get on the first call with us to then the second, third, and then finally close. So on that first call, it's extremely crucial that we provide as much value as possible. And that's going to come from having a knowledgeable sales engineer, somebody who understands not only how to sell, but also what the process is with the service that you're offering or the product that you're offering. So for example, for us at Optimum 7, what we do using a couple of different tools is that we'll share our screen, always show your face, but also guide them through what we see, our findings on their site. Right. So we can actually dive in and show them a personalized audit almost, if you will. So that would allow us to establish trust and then bring them closer to the final step by warming them up to then get them on the call later on to discuss a strategy and pricing.
Yep. So, and that all happens after somebody says, yes, I'm interested. Right. So I'll break down the strategy that we use that actually works in lead generation. So the number one thing is you have to have some videos that are top funnel videos, branding videos that you can use for targeting. Let's identify an audience. Let's say I'm trying to reach all the VPs at companies that have between 100 and 1,000 employees. Right. I can identify this list, and we'll talk about grabbing this data, but there are tools out there where you can grab this data, all their phone numbers, email addresses, et cetera, et cetera. When you create this list, then what you want to do is you want to go to Facebook, create a custom audience with their emails, names, last names, phone numbers. You want to go to AdRoll, create a custom audience. You want to go to LinkedIn, create a custom audience. Let's say I found 10,000 VPs. Right? With the latest iOS update on Facebook, you'll probably have, I don't know, 2,000 matches if you're lucky. On AdRoll, you'll have higher probably. And on LinkedIn, you'll have higher because LinkedIn custom audiences actually are pretty powerful because LinkedIn already stores all this data. The next thing you do is you create campaigns with these 45, 60-second videos, and you start targeting them for a period of 2 weeks to 4 weeks. So they need to be seeing your brand before. Otherwise, you won't get responses to your cold emails. Once you retarget them 2-4 weeks, and you can see the frequency of how often are they watching those that video or those videos, then you create a specific email outreach strategy that has initial email and 3 follow-ups. Okay. In the initial email, what needs to happen is you can't, and we all get these emails. Hey, I'm John from ABCD. You have time for 5 minutes to get on a phone call this week? No, I don't have time because I have no idea what you're offering me. There's no value. There's no personalization. So what we do is we create the script for these 4 emails, and we also hyper-personalize the first sentence. Hyper-personalize means if you look at my LinkedIn or if you look at my profile, you're going to see that I'm into music, I'm into soccer, I went to FIU on a scholarship. If in the first sentence of your outreach to me, regardless of what you're trying to pitch me or sell me, if you say, hey, Duran, I saw that you went to FIU and you were on a soccer scholarship, I actually played soccer in college, blah, blah, blah. Something that relates to me. Or, hey, I saw that you play classical guitar. One of my favorite flamenco guitarist is Paco de Lucia. The moment you say that, you got my attention. I'll give you my 10, 15 minutes. But we don't end it with a phone call pitch. We end it with value. So number 1, there needs to be hyper-personalization after you do the retargeting. And number 2, there needs to be a call to action that provides some kind of value. Maybe you want to give them an audit. Maybe you want to give them some sort of consultative checklist. Something needs to happen, right? And there's a way to specifically send out these emails as well. We use specific tools, like one of the tools that we use is Limlist. Another one that we use is Woodpecker. We also use Mailgun for mass emailing. So there's a specific process for this. But what happens afterwards is you are able to have people respond and say, yes, I am interested in that. Yes, I would like to have a conversation. Yes, send me that audit. Yes, send me that checklist, right? When you start a conversation, one of the first things you do is you connect with them on LinkedIn, because your LinkedIn is actually very powerful from a B2B standpoint. And once you do that, it becomes an omni-channel approach where you need to assign it to somebody and you need to just keep providing value until they go from cold to warm to hot. And as Joe stated, it's not an easy process. It's a very specific process. It's not difficult to start the conversation, but Joe, is it difficult to close?
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to close because you have to show them that, number 1, you're an expert in something. Mm-hmm. And number 2, you have to provide so much value that they say, and we have these conversations, say, you know, Duran, you are a man of your word. You provided me with so much value. Damn it, I wish I had the budget to work with you. I really want to work with you, but I don't have the budget.
Yeah, the timing. Yeah, right? That's the third. Now, we've had a lot of those conversations, and Joe was in some of those client deals, Joe, where we spoke to somebody 1.5 years ago, and 1 year later, the guy comes back and says, okay, we're ready now. Yeah. So you just build these relationships. And another thing is that guy that doesn't have the budget, he probably has a few friends who have the budget, right? That's where the nurture comes in. So if you're not using any kind of automated nurture flows with Aweber, Autopilot, what's the other platform that we use? Active Campaign. Mm-hmm. If you're not constantly messaging your prospects, your customers, as well as your pipeline, the leads in your pipeline, you're losing a lot of opportunity. So the cold email strategy that we do for lead generation works. It takes time. It takes at least 90 days to get off the ground. It's not cheap. You can't do this for a few $100s. We do also lead generation based on the number of leads, but you're going to end up paying a lot per lead. So if you're a B2B business, let's say you sell PR. I'm happy to generate leads for you for PR, but you're going to pay $250 a lead, $250 for everybody that I introduced to you. And those are cold, right? With all that being said, Joe, you know the power of inbound. You know the power of inbound organic. Yeah. You know the power of inbound social. You know the power of inbound AdWords. And then you know the power or the lack thereof
for cold email outreach, which is your top one?
Inbound leads are always going to be the best.
Inbound organic?
Inbound organic, that the search intent is there. Half the time it's a branded term, meaning they know who you are, right? Or they're ready. They're actively looking, right? Because again, one of the biggest things throughout the sales process, like Duran said, is the timing, right? Very rarely are you going to find somebody right place, right time with a cold email. It could take a year. It could take 2 years. So obviously, number one, from a marketing standpoint, from a business standpoint, inbound organic is definitely number one. But that comes with establishing the brand awareness first, providing value. So that way they know what to look for. They know who to look for. And once that lead comes in, has a much higher close rate.
Yeah. So for B2B, we definitely suggest that you have an outreach process, because maybe businesses that do $1 million to $10 million, they might be looking online. They might be Googling this stuff, but businesses that do over $200 million, they're not searching online for PR experts and SEO experts and e-commerce experts. They're not. They're too big. They're asking a buddy of theirs, hey, I need this. Who should I talk to? I mean, CEOs ask CEOs, CTOs ask CTOs, VPs ask VPs. So if you can trigger the attention of somebody with that video, it's going to work. Another thing that worked for us, this is actually kind of like not a secret, but an internal process that I want to share. We'll do an analysis video of that specific client. This works with larger accounts. So somebody that has, let's say, 500 employees, I'll do an audit of their website, of their e-commerce website, and I'll tell them with a big, bad, bold offer. Big, bad, bold is very important. I'll say, well, I can find you $2 million in 90 days. And if I can't, I'll work for you for free until I find those $2 million. And sometimes we don't get a response back. So what we do is we'll take that video, that's a 60-second video, we'll put it on LinkedIn, and we'll retarget every single employee of that company. So not only does the VP see it, every single employee sees it. And that depends on how bad I want to work with that company. So if you can identify organizations and companies that that must be your clients, this process works like a charm. And and I think, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's gonna get hyper targeted, especially, and we talk about this a lot after this iOS update and after the fact that lookalike audiences kind of disappeared overnight. It's gonna be more the case. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And another thing that we're kind of seeing making a comeback is direct mail, right? And it's the same concept. If you can get hyper personalized with direct mail, do some research. I see you like cigars, right? I'm going to send you a cigar in the mail with a letter saying, let's grab a glass of scotch and a cigar and discuss and talk shop. Right. So that type of approach for lead gen, I think, because of what's going on right now, we're going to start to see an increase.
And from a B2B standpoint, this is what you need to think of. How important is the attention of a CEO that runs a $50 million company, and how much is it worth to you? 5 minutes of his time. So if you can grab 5 minutes of his time, it doesn't matter anywhere, I guess, right? So another thing I will add to what Joe is saying is gifting. So we have to get, as marketers, as business owners, we have to get creative. Sending an email saying, hey, do you have time to chat on the phone for 50? Like, this is not going to work anymore. We got to get better, right? And our cold email strategies address most of the hyper personalization side of things. Again, how can you differentiate your message from everybody else? Of course, you have to back it up with what you're saying. You can't be just a ghost. You have to be online somewhere. You have to have your visibility. They Google your name and you're there. They know what you can do. They know your elevator pitch within 5 seconds. That needs to be happening. But again, retargeting, hyper-personalized emails, even hyper-personalized direct mail, and a funnel that basically keeps nurturing them until they go from cold to warm to hot. We'll talk to you guys next week.